Okay, so for the last few weeks we have been talking about discipleship. How many of you have been here for at least one of those messages? Most of us? We've been talking about discipleship, and I think it's been a really good time, and I'm very glad that we've gone in this direction because a lot of us here were very passionate about the concept that discipleship is extremely important, not just for Christian life, but just for us to function as human beings. Being disciples of Christ is crucial. And we were looking at the concept that now, and here's just some recapping from the last few weeks in case you need to be caught up. We looked at the kind of phenomenon that in the modern church today, in modern Christianity, in the American church, it's now generally believed that you can be a professing Christian and you can be a churchgoer in good standing and not be a disciple. You can be a Christian, you can be a churchgoer, but you don't have to be a disciple. They're like viewed as being two different things today for whatever reason. And there's a lot of history that goes into that, but it's viewed today that there's apparently no crucial or essential connection between being a Christian and being a disciple of Christ. But as we've talked about over the last few weeks, being a disciple of Christ is living out Christianity. It is Christianity. That's the heart of the thing. It's not some bonus. It's not some above and beyond the call. It's not for just the really serious Christians and not for the ones who are kind of half in and half out. There is no half in or half out. You are a disciple or you're not a disciple. And with Christianity, discipleship is the core. We looked at how even the word Christian originates from the concept little Christs. That's where the term comes from. Christian is a little Christ, someone who attempts to live their life like Christ. It was a nickname that was given to the people who live their life as Christ's disciples. So you say, which came first, the chicken or the egg, the disciple or the Christian? Disciples were around before the term Christian was ever around. That was a nickname that was given to it. You won't find the term Christian in the Bible anywhere. What you find are disciples. And what you find in Jesus' teaching is a call not to be a Christian. He said, a call to be my disciple. He said, go and make disciples of all the nations, teaching them to do what I've taught you to do. So Christianity and discipleship are not these separate things. Discipleship is not next level Christianity. Thank you so much, Violet, my incredible mother-in-law, everybody. Christianity and discipleship are not two separate things. Discipleship is not a bonus. It's not above and beyond the call. Discipleship is the heart of Christianity. Christianity is just a nickname we gave to being a disciple of Christ. And I can't tell you how it managed to get separated in our minds over a period of years with bad theology and bad interpretation, but it has been. Somehow we've managed to take the discipleship out of living the Christian life, which is very sad because the discipleship is the actual living out of the Christian life. There are no levels of Christianity. There's no, I'm sort of in, and you're just really intense about it. I've got 1 foot in here and 1 foot out here, and I dabble in Christianity. You are a disciple or you're not. That's the biblical picture. And of course, and I'm still in my recap here, we talked about how what being a disciple is learning how to live your life the way Christ would live your life if he were you. It's learning how to do your job the way Christ would do your job. It's learning how to lead your family the way Christ would lead your family. It's learning how to deal with people the way Christ would deal with the people you have to deal with. It's learning how to live the life that God designed us to live, the life that Christ taught, the life that Christ called us into. So for those of you who missed some of these last few messages, I really encourage you to check it out on our YouTube channel, Life Church Jensen Beach at YouTube. We have all the teachings up there, so go check it out. It's been a really rich time. But this morning, I want to further flesh out this idea a little bit by looking at another concept that's become very common in American Christianity today. Kind of a phenomena, a very strong belief that's been popping up all over the place in the last 50 years or so. And I call it this. I call it what if God sends me to Africa syndrome? What if God sends me to Africa syndrome? And I'm sure some of you are probably figuring out what I'm talking about by now. for whatever reason, the idea has come into the minds of American Christianity that, okay, if I really give my life to God, if I really give my life to God, whatever that means exactly, if I get serious about it, then God's going to mess everything up. He's going to pluck me out of my life, and he's going to send me to be a missionary in Africa. For whatever reason, it's always a missionary in Africa. Like, no, not Africa, please, Lord. I'd rather be in Africa than, like, I don't know, Russia. If you're Russian, I'm sorry. Well, for whatever reason, you always hear, oh, God, if I get serious, what if God sends me to be a missionary in some terrible place, right? Have you encountered this idea at all? Well, if I get really serious about it, he's going to mess everything up. My life is going to be over if I put discipleship to Christ at the top of my priority list. That's it. My life on earth as I know it is ruined. God is going to mess it all up. And this is a very common idea. This idea, or shades of this idea, at least, I think has become very, very widespread in the church today. In fact, I had this idea some years back when I was a teenager. I was born and raised in the church, always going to church every Sunday. My parents were involved in ministry since before I was born. And so I always, I had a very strong sense of moral conviction. So I was always, I tried to be like a good person. And I was, I considered myself a Christian. I went to church, and, I knew God, and I talked to him. I read the Bible occasionally. But I knew that I needed to put God at the top of my priority list. I just had this feeling, I need to do this. I know this is what's right for me to do. I need to get serious about discipleship to Christ. This is what I need to do. I knew I needed to do this stuff. But I also thought that the moment I did that, I would never have any fun again. And in my teenage mind, this was an unacceptable thing. Like, I want to have fun. I'm a teenager. I got to live it up, right? I got to enjoy my life. And the moment I get serious about this, I want to become one of those stiff-necked, boring Christians, right? That's how the world views, like, oh, you're a really serious Christian? You must be pretty boring. That's the reaction I got in high school. Oh, well, Nate's a Christian. He doesn't like fun. This is the concept I had. The more serious I get about Christianity, the less enjoyment I will get out of my life. It's going to be a really sad existence, but at least it's right. This is the concept I had. So I struck a plea bargain with myself. I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, while I'm young, I'm going to have fun. And I'll be a Christian, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'll go to church, and I'll try to be a generally good person. Again, I had strong moral conviction, so I'll try to be generally good, but I'm not going to get really, really serious about it. God will be like 4th or 5th on my priority list while I'm young. And then, when I'm too old to have fun anymore, which, for whatever reason, in my mind, my teenage mind, it was 40. When I'm 40 and can't have fun anymore, and now it doesn't seem that far off anymore, which is terrifying. When I'm 40 and can't have fun anymore, then I'll get serious. I'll have had my fun, I'll have lived my life, and then I'll get serious. It's like the people who are, I'm going to give up smoking. I'll do it a week from now after I smoke a whole lot of cigarettes. When I get 40, then I'll give my life to God. Then I'll be a disciple. I'll be serious, and it won't matter anymore. I'll be old. I'll have had my fun, and I can live the boring kind of just shell of a life that the disciple leads. This is the concept I had. It was, really, it was like this unspoken deal I had with myself. Okay, well, it's all right. You don't have to get too serious yet. 40 is still a little ways off, Nate. It's okay. And again, this idea I've encountered with a surprising amount of people, especially young people. Well, I like having fun. I can't give up my life yet. Maybe when I'm older. I'd be a disciple if it wasn't so boring and awful, and if it wasn't so hard and terrible. There's this concept, and again, different shades of this thing have become very common, I think, in American Christianity. So here's a question, and this is rhetorical. Please don't shout out answers. We're going to have chaos. Is that the reality of discipleship? Is that the reality of the life that Christ calls us to? Does discipleship to Christ mean the ruin of your life on earth? Like, my life on earth is going to really stink, and when I die, then I'll be in heaven, and then I can have fun. Is that the picture that Christ paints for us? And again, this is rhetorical. We're going to be looking at this question a little more as we go on this morning. Is that the reality? In order to give us a better idea of how to answer this question, let's look at two very short parables that Jesus gave us. He gave two parables in Matthew chapter 13, one after the other, that describe what it looks like when somebody chooses to be a disciple, when somebody chooses to enter into the kind of life that Christ called us to, okay? And before I go on, I should say, in Christ's teaching, he uses the term the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God, quite a bit. This is a term that he uses to refer to the kind of life he calls us into, life as we were designed to live it, life in discipleship to him, okay? So this is what he's talking about. And he says here in Matthew 13, verse 44, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field." So before we go into that, let's look at the next parable. It's right after this in verse 45. He goes on and says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls who, on finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it." So you have two parables essentially painting the same exact picture. Two guys who stumble upon something they consider to be of very great value, and they both sell all that they have in order to obtain this thing. Pretty straightforward, right? And he says the kingdom of heaven is like this. So here's the question. What kind of picture is being painted here? These two men, when they find this item, what is their concern based on the language that's being used here? What is at the foremost of their minds? Question, is it a sweating of the cost? So say the guy you found the treasure in the field, whatever it looked like, maybe gold or crude oil, who knows. He's in a field that's not owned by him. He finds his treasure, and he sells everything that he has in order to buy the field, and then he can own the treasure. Apparently, the treasure was so valuable in his mind that he was willing to get rid of anything he had in order to get his hands on this thing. And again, it said in his joy, he went out and sold everything that he had in order to get his hands on this thing. So again, is sweating the cost of getting his hand on this treasure, is that at the forefront of his mind in the picture that Christ paints here? I think the word joy kind of would throw that idea out the window, right? You don't rush out and joyfully sell all that you have to get something if you're really sweating like, oh, should I? I don't know, the cost might be too great. It seemed like this guy saw the item, saw that it was so valuable that he had to do anything he could to get his hands on this thing. You have the same picture reiterated with the merchant and the pearl. It seems to me that rather than a concern with a sweating of the cost of what they could obtain, their concern was probably more than anything with making sure they didn't miss the opportunity. You follow? They find this item, and in his joy, he runs off and sells everything that he has in order to get his hands on this treasure. It seems to me more than anything, like I said, he'd be concerned with making sure he doesn't miss this opportunity. The merchant finds the pearl, and he's making sure that he's not going to miss this chance. There's a feeling of excitement, a feeling of joy you get, a feeling of deep appreciation of the value of the thing. Do you get that picture as well? The value of the opportunity, the value of what they might be able to receive out of this. And I think what is profound, because again, this is a parable. Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven, the life I've called you into is like this. I think what is profound here is that kind of sense of the opportunity to be missed, that kind of sense of excitement and joy and deep appreciation of the value of the thing, I think it was exactly the same for those people who were drawn to Jesus in those long ago days when he first walked among us. And when Jesus roamed the countryside preaching, saying, look, this is how life is supposed to look. This is how you are to live. This is how you are to act. This is how you are to do things. That level of the sense of the opportunity to be missed, the excitement, the joy, the appreciation of the value of the thing, For the people who dropped their lives and followed this guy, I think Jesus is painting us a very specific picture. I think it was the same for those people who heard Jesus speak, saw what he was offering. They weighed the cost, and for them there was no question of which was the more valuable choice. I think it's only in light of images like this that we can really assess, that we can correctly assess the cost of discipleship. That's a term that's used in modern Christianity as well. The cost of discipleship. What it's going to cost you to be Christ's disciple. That is the cost, what they weighed. And I think it's only in light of those things that we can evaluate what the cost of discipleship really is. Because it seems like these two men, the man who found the treasure and the man who found the pearl, what they were concerned with above all else was whether or not they would get the deal, per se. They find the item and they have to get their hands on it. Their priority was, well, this is valuable. I've got to get this thing. They saw the value. They understood the opportunity. And I think what is core to our discussion this morning about discipleship is the concept that we absolutely must understand this about discipleship to Christ, that there is nobody who goes into discipleship to him sadly or reluctantly. And we have this picture in modern Christianity of somebody, they weigh the choices. Okay, what do I do here? Am I a Christ's disciple? Do I really get serious about this? Well, that means the end of my life on earth. What do I do here? And they go, okay, finally, I'm going to be Christ's disciple. And they go with their head hung low to the chains of discipleship, right? We pluck words out like slave to Christ, and we say, oh, slavery is definitely a bad thing. It must be a negative thing. Self-slavery. But the concept here is we need to understand this is not the picture painted by Christ. The picture painted by him says the kingdom of heaven is like the man who finds a treasure in the field. It's like the merchant who finds a pearl of great value. And for them, these guys weighed the cost of discipleship, and it was no question. They rushed out and did everything they had to do to get their hands on this thing. And there's nobody who walks into discipleship with their head hung low, because it's not the kind of decision it is. It's not a moaning and groaning session. Oh, look how terrible it is that I have to place discipleship to Christ as my priority, that I have to get God as my priority. Because that's what this is talking about, by the way. It's not talking about literally, okay, if you want to be Christ's disciple, you've got to sell everything you own. That's not the point being made here. The point being made here is that the man who found the treasure in the field, the man who found the pearl, they saw this item and they had to have it. And they were willing to do anything they had to do, sell anything they needed to sell to get their hands on this thing. For them, discipleship, for them, the item itself was of utmost priority. It was the top priority above anything else. That's the point Jesus is making here. And the weighing of the cost is not a simple going back and forth saying, oh, woe is me that I have to consider my material wealth and my goods and all this stuff as less valuable than discipleship to Christ or following him with my life. We cling so dearly to this stuff, the same stuff and the same habits that make our life miserable and hopeless to begin with. Oh, how could I place this as lower priority than discipleship to Christ? That's just so hard. Again, it's not a moaning and groaning session. When you look at the two men who found the treasure and who found the pearl, they counted the cost too. They saw the treasure and they saw everything else they had to do to get a hold of the treasure. The pearl and what they had to do to get a hold of the pearl. And for them, that was the counting of the cost. And again, you don't get a picture of hesitancy, of regret, of sadness, of reluctancy. What you get a picture of is immediately excitement and joy, because they see the opportunity to be missed. They see the opportunity of what is being offered there. So the passages, when you look at how Christ describes discipleship to him, it's not about misery or this dreadful price to be paid. These two men paid the price, and the price was putting these things as their priority. It's not about misery. I think that's a huge, huge misconception. Because in the end, the point here is that these men saw the superiority of what was being offered. The superiority of the treasure to anything else. The superiority of the pearl to any other material wealth he could have gained. They saw that it was better. They saw that it was obviously the better choice. Does that make sense? They saw the value of the thing. They understood the value of the thing. And I think that in terms of discipleship, until we understand what is being offered in discipleship, until we see the value of the thing, until we understand the value of the thing, what we're choosing, we're not going to really want to do it. I'll explain what I mean there in a second, but I think until we see the value and until we see what is actually being offered and we understand it, I don't think we're going to be able to be effective disciples. I don't think we're going to be able to live the life we were designed to live. I don't think we're going to be able to function the way Christ called us to function. And furthermore, until we change how we present, how we present the good news to the world, a lot of them aren't going to want it either. You say, well, wait a minute, are you saying that we should try to make the gospel attractive to people? I'm saying no. I don't have to make the gospel attractive to people. Because the gospel at its core is the most attractive thing in the universe. Gospel means good news. You know what good news is? It's really good news to hear. And for mankind, what the gospel presents is the best possible news. Of course it's attractive. It is the story of how we can actually experience redemption in our life here on earth. Redemption of what life was meant to be. Not redemption in a weird, spiritual, abstract sense. I'm talking about literally the promise, the good news that our lives can enter into the kind of life they were designed to enter into. That our lives can be functional the way they were designed to be functional. That we can experience joy and fullness and peace, walking hand in hand with our Creator as we were designed to. That's the gospel. That's the teaching of Jesus Christ. And you say, well, wait a minute, okay, what's being offered here? If you say that this kind of life Jesus calls us into is so valuable, like a treasure in a field or like a great pearl, that we should have it at the top of our priority list. What is the beauty of this thing that's being offered by Christ, the beauty of discipleship? I think it's very well described in Jesus' own mission statement in John 10, verse 10. He says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And this is a verse that we use a lot here because you have an explicit statement from Jesus Christ. I came for this reason, that they may have life and have it abundantly. Not some other life somewhere else, that they may have life right here, right now, and experience that life abundantly, deeper, fuller, more rich. Life as it was meant to be. Life as we know it, but better in every way. And that's really good news. That is gospel. I mean, imagine for a second. Imagine the life as you know it, your life. Living your life as you know it, with your job and your kids and your family and your friends and your situation, your car payment, whatever. Imagine going through life as you know it, but with a constant joy and peace that is unshakable by anything that could happen around you. Because that's the kind of life that Jesus taught. Imagine actually being able to be patient and kind towards people who are very explicitly impatient and rude towards you. I know that's a very far-off concept for most of us. Can you imagine that? Because that's the kind of life that Jesus taught. Imagine being able to have deep meaning and purpose with every day. Imagine being able to walk through your life with incredibly deep confidence that your Creator loves you and is walking with you through your life. Because that's the kind of life that Jesus taught. Not some abstract form of life that we don't really experience or know anything about. He's talking about life as it was meant to be, because God designed life to be good, guys. He didn't design life to hurt us. He knows what's best for us. That's why he tells us what to do. He says, why would you do that? Do this. It'll work better for you. Don't murder. You're killing yourselves. God's laws are reasonable because he knows what's best for us and he wants what is best for us. And you say, well, wait a minute, what's so valuable about discipleship? What's so valuable that the cost would be worth it? What makes it so great that it should be the top of our priority list? And the answer is discipleship is the door into life as it was meant to be. Life that is fulfilling and meaningful, life in relationship and connection with your Creator, life with deep peace and fulfillment and all of the above. It's life as it was meant to be. It's glimpses of heaven. And I think this concept that discipleship to Christ is the ruin of your life on earth is a bad one. No, I'm not saying if you become a disciple to Christ, you'll never have any hard times again. I've experienced firsthand that is not true. Because the fact is, we're living in a very difficult world. A world in which the vast majority of people couldn't care less. Couldn't care less. I always get that messed up. The vast majority of people couldn't care less about God or what's right or what's wrong. We're living in a world where evil is dominant. And so, of course, we're going to experience suffering. What I am saying is, discipleship to Christ is literally learning how to live your life the way Christ taught us to live your life. And it's so much better than any other alternative. That's a picture being painted by the man who found the treasure in the field. For him, the treasure was better than any other alternative. He had to get his hands on it. The merchant who found the pearl, that pearl was better than any other alternative. He had to get his hands on it. And for the people who heard what Jesus presented when he walked the earth, when he taught among us, for them, the life he presented was better than any alternative. That's why they followed him. That's why they made their lives revolve around him. And that's what discipleship to Christ is for us today. It's the path into the lives that we were created to live. Life as it was meant to be. And I've been very blessed over the last few years to begin to experience this myself. And again, I told you, I had this concept as a teenager. If I really got serious about giving my life to Christ, really got serious about discipleship, my life would be ruined. It would be the right choice, but it would be a very sad choice, because I'd be giving up everything I love about life. And what I've found is that I could not have been more mistaken or more deceived. Because as I've given God more and more in my life, I've found the deepest fulfillment and joy. I can genuinely tell you, I love my life. I love it. Savannah and I, at the end of the day, Savannah is my wife, we always say, I love my life. I love that I'm married to you. I love our son. I love what we do. I love what we're surrounded by. I love my life. I've loved my life for the last 2 years. Even in the hardest of times, I've loved my life. Because discipleship to Christ is not the ruin of our lives on earth. It is the fulfillment of our lives on earth. It is not the end of everything you love about life. It is bringing you into a deeper level of what you love about life. And I'm not trying to tell you, again, come to Christ. Everything will be honky-dory for the rest of your life. You will have hard times. But at a deeper level, you'll have peace and joy and fulfillment. You'll walk hand in hand with your Creator through those hard times. And that's awesome. That is the best news humanity could ever get. So as we close here, as the band comes up, I know talking about things like this can tend to get very abstract, can tend to end up not meaning anything. But as we talked about the last few weeks, discipleship is not some abstract thing. Well, maybe I'm a disciple and maybe I'm not. Discipleship is simply a matter of saying, I want to learn how to live my life the way Christ said I should live my life. It's learning how to do things the way Christ called us to do things. That is discipleship. And Christ said, go and make disciples of all the nations, teaching them to actually do what I taught you to do. There's nothing abstract about that. It's a life decision. It's learning how to make our choices in a way that works. So for those of you who have heard this stuff and want to do it, because it's very good news. I don't have to make it an attractive thing. It's the most attractive thing. For those of you who want to do it, start. Get in your Bible, read about what Jesus was like, and try to start molding your life that way. Talk to some of us who are farther down the road of discipleship than you are, and we can help you. So, Father, thank you for the good news, Lord. It's such good news. Thank you for sending your Son, Lord, and teaching us how to get through life, how to live life in abundance, God. How to experience life as it was meant to be. Father, for those of us who want to be able to do this, we ask for your help. For those of us who are still weighing this in our minds, Father, we ask for clarity and guidance. We love you, Father, and we're so grateful for all you've done for us and continue to do for us. Amen.